stars of the ocean break the law, get carried away. If not, the heart is stolen. Sunset will fade.
Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Ako, si Biniwining Bakunawa at tagpagyanig ng daigdig, siyang nagdadala ng daluyong, laho at bagyo. Ang lumamon sa 6 na buwan, sanhi ng karimlan, mutya ng saligotgot at dayang ng sigalot. Bibi Bakunawa. Magandang umaga. Good morning. Did you all sleep well? I must admit that we are streaming late today because I kind of also woke up a little late. So we are running 30 minutes behind our projected schedule. But it's okay, it's all right. Sometimes it's just like that. Now, today we are going to read the 10th chapter of The Philippines, a past revisited by Renato Constantino. And hold on, I think I need to change the music. Hi, Sun Turtle! Good morning! Magandang umaga! By the way, the music that you are hearing is Bones by Datu. You should check them out on YouTube. They're amazing. But I should change my music. There we go. So again, today we are reading Renato Constantino's The Philippines, a Past Revisited. And this book has been one of the influential books back then, before the first EDSA revolution. Constantino's works in general have been influential to the young minds of the people who led that revolution, because his works showed parallels to that age's situation. Well, you can always see parallels in every sort of political and social dynamic where there is some sort of imbalance. And we are just reading it today to remind ourselves of the past, because just like they say, those who forget the past are deemed to repeat it over and over and over again. We have been reading this book for quite a while now. We've been doing it like one chapter at a time, because it does take time to read all of it. Now, let me just move to my reading screen. There we are. And yeah, if you would notice, starting last night, I've decided to put on my salakot, just so that people are not confused, because I look like this currently, a tiny little chibi. This is not my real form. But yeah, to make it seem normal, because a lot of people, the image of me in their heads is that one with the salakot. And I have learned to accept that this is my branding. But no, I will not dance the fandango like Scaramouche of Genshin Impact. The only fandango I know is pandango sa ilaw. Anyway, before we begin, let's have a little checkup of you guys. How have you been? How was your sleep? Did y'all sleep well? For me, I've slept well last night because I have discovered the wonders of melatonin again. Mino, why are you flexing your are you flexing your Halia subscription here? What's that supposed to mean? Are you ready to read? So here is how it will go. As usual, we will be reading the book and then we will be discussing some of it. Okay, sure, Mino. Whatever you say. Hold on. Let me just move my other things so I can see my. There we go. So I'm not confused with this. All right. Let's begin, shall we? Chapter 10: Revolution and Nationhood. The concept of nationhood had its earlier roots in the scattered and fragmentary uprising against the Spaniards, but these spontaneous reactions to various forms of exploitation and abuse could not will the people into one because the material basis for a nation was absent. And what do we mean by this? Nationhood as a concept, like the idea of being one nation, did not really exist back then. Why? Because back then we were, well, until now, we are still a group of islands, and there was not a lot of communication between them like as we do today. And they were just very, very diverse, and there are different, maybe we couldn't call it kingdoms, uh, but to make it simpler, there is no one governing factor before the 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 Spanish came, and so when they came over, it's like there's these multiple societies, separate societies that are being held under the control of Spain. And they didn't really see much in common between them until that happened. So the thing that they had in common was being colonized. And of course, if you were being colonized, you're being abused and exploited, you would rebel. You would react in such a way that you're expressing your desire for freedom. So there were uprisings. Now, these fragmentary uprisings are scattered in the archipelago. It's not like one big movement. It was homegrown within each little society. So that is where the concept of nationhood was born. But again, these little reactions, these little uprisings couldn't really put everyone into one big nation. And again, we said that there was a lack of communication between everyone. Hold on, let's continue reading. Moreover, the lack of communication facilities and the colonial policy of deliberately keeping the people in a state of ignorance by severely limiting educational opportunities and suppressing the dissemination of new ideas further delay the growth of a national consciousness. So back then, educating the Filipinos or the Indios was not a priority of Spain. Like, why would they want that? If you are not leading but keeping a group of people as a subordinate, as someone who would just like do your bidding for you, you are oppressing them. You would not want them to be educated. You want them as dumb as possible so you can keep on feeding them bullshit or whatever you want to say. So they didn't really press on with educating the people. But we have already discussed in the past few chapters that that kind of change when the policy was okay, we'll let you into the schools, but also the Filipinos were allowed to be priests, and that was a very lucrative job. And from the money of Filipinos becoming priests, their little brothers and maybe older brothers could go to school in Europe, in Spain, in different countries. So, yeah, that's where it started. That's where they got ideas of nationhood by allowing the people to become educated. Spain basically allowed them to have ideas of revolution, of nationhood, of independence without them actually meaning to. But even after the faint outlines of a national market and a national economy had become visible, the corresponding national consciousness began to take form only as articulators who could project the different grievances and aspirations of the people emerged. It was through their articulation that the common denominators of these resentments and expectations were crystallized and disseminated on a scale sufficient to create among a majority of people a sense of nationality, separate and distinct, and a counter consciousness that provided a set of alternatives to colonial oppression. So when people started voicing out their grievances, because not everyone wanted to do that. Why would they want to do that? It's going to endanger their lives, their livelihood, their safety, their children's safety. But there are people who are brave enough to express their grievances. And so when they did that, everyone started figuring out that, hey, we have commonalities. We are experiencing the same thing. And that started the spark of, this idea of nationhood. And they started thinking for themselves that maybe this is not it. Maybe this being a colony thing is not everything. Maybe there's something else. Okay, so who are these people? Let's read on. These articulators were the ilustrados. They belong to classes that arose as a result of developing national economy, like we talked about earlier. You remember the Filipinos becoming priests, or those who were mixed and they had businesses, they had the money to study. So, coming from families that had benefited from the economic development of the country, these young men were able to take advantage of the educational opportunities that a liberalized Spanish colonial policy offered at the time. Sons of the provincial elite went to Manila to study and came into contact with one another and with the sons of the Manila elite. So, these young men who are getting educated got in contact with each other, and they realized that they had more in common than they were led to believe, and they also were being given new ideas through being educated. More affluent families sent their young men to Spain. So, they're since they have more money, they can afford sending their children to Spain or the other places in Europe that could offer them education. In less than a generation, the products of the new educational policies became the early spokesman of the people's grievances and aspiration. And so, if you would think about it, in today's society, people keep on giving flack to educated people. They're like smart shaming them, or they're saying that um, your education is wasted if you keep on just talking about your grievances against the government who actually sent you to school, because like they think that the government is the one giving the money to these people to go to school or paying for their tuition. But here's the thing, that is the role of education. If education does not cause you to question things around you, your education has failed you. You're not really educated if your idea of education is just upholding everything that you've been told without questioning it. You were not educated, you were just some monkey who memorized things. Okay, let's continue reading. Their consciousness was the product of objective reality, more specifically of their status within that reality. But the articulation of their ideas would help mobilize forces that would affect changes in the merging nation and in the people. Changes which would in many ways be more far reaching than the Ilustrados themselves envisioned. The Ilustrados served to project a consciousness of nationhood among the people that was already latent in their practice. So, when we say that their consciousness was the product of objective reality and their status within that reality, they do realize that they, the Ilustrados, were more blessed than the regular people, than the peasants, than the people who were out there in the field working and being abused, because they were given the opportunity to learn, to study abroad, and to be able to speak, to be eloquent enough to articulate their ideas. They know that they are lucky. And since you had that privilege, it also gives you the responsibility to speak in behalf of the people who don't have a voice. So, hi netizen. We are talking about the start of like the actual consciousness of becoming a nation. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yes, it's a beautiful Thursday morning, and yet here I am again talking about revolution. Let me just drink my cup of tea. Today I am drinking green tea, one of my favorites. So, as I was saying, the Ilustrados know that they are privileged. They're privileged to be educated and be articulate enough to express their ideas. And they know, as they are educated, that people should be equal. They wanted equality. And not just for themselves, but for those who cannot speak for themselves, like the people who were not educated. And again, I would like to take this as an opportunity to compare it to today, wherein educated people are like being silenced and being smart shamed. If you start talking and like showing that you are smart in your classroom, there's always one buffoon buffoon who will say, "Oh, nagagaling-galingan," or "pabida," things like that. So we're going backwards. Okay, let's talk about, yeah, typical classmates, right? And that is actually a reflection of the bigger culture, wherein nowadays we don't like smart people because they have different ideas than what we have, and what the general public has is what's been fed to them by the social media. It's so hard to accept that what you thought or what you've learned is wrong. And it's easier to think that, oh, I know something that everyone else doesn't know because I learned it from someone in TikTok or something. I'm the holder of this information. Yes, you don't have anything to prove to them, and they're temporary. Exactly, Mino. But here's the thing, when it comes to classmates like that, it's better to just, do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. Don't let the smart shaming get to you. Just keep on being smart, besties. Let's continue reading. Well, new Filipinos. The growth of the concept of nationhood was coterminous with the development of the concept of Filipino. So, again, back then, the concept of Filipino was different from what we think of it now, because nowadays, um, when you say someone is Filipino, it's either just sanguinis or just solis. What does that mean? Sanguini means blood. So by blood, if your mother or father are Filipinos, you're also a Filipino automatically. Just solis, it would be by birth. Like if you were born in the Philippines, you are a Filipino. But back then, it was a lot more different. The Filipinos were the Españoles Filipinos or Creoles, Spaniards born in the Philippines. They alone were called Filipinos. We talked about this in chapter 8. Thus, in the beginning, the term Filipino had a racial and elitist connotation because they would be higher than the natives, which were called Indios. However, with the economic progress of the 18th and 19th centuries, Chinese mestizos and urbanized natives, who together eventually dominated the ranks of the new Principalia, became considered as Filipinos because of their essentially Hispanized cultural background and inclinations. The term Filipino was growing in scope. So now it's no longer just Spanish people born in the Philippines. It began to include Chinese mestizos and some natives who were rich. The term Filipino was growing in scope, although its application was still limited by property, education, and Spanish culture. It's very, very elitist. Those who call themselves Filipinos were still Spanish oriented, but at the same time, they had already developed a loyalty to the Philippines as a distinct entity. Why? Why? Because, as we have talked about in the previous chapters, even though they are Hispanized, they are rich, they were educated, and they had, the Spanish culture background, those people who came from Spain still looked down on them. They still could not get the same jobs, even if they were similarly or even better equipped for it. There was still discrimination. And so you will not be loyal to an entity that discriminates against you. And that entity was Spain, because it was the Spanish people who were like treating them as not their equal. And so they were feeling discriminated upon, and they were all feeling that. So they developed this sense of camaraderie. They thought of themselves as, you know what, we're on the same boat. And that led them to be more loyal to the idea of the Philippines as a distinct entity separate from Spain. Now, the concept and the feeling of being a Filipino was becoming established. The term Filipino, which was before used to refer to only, just the Creoles, and then later also Spanish mestizo, who could pass for pure Spaniards, was being appropriated by the Chinese mestizos and the native elite. The term Filipino was growing in scope. Having benefited from economic development, the Creoles, Spanish mestizos, Chinese mestizos, and urbanized natives now had an economic base to protect. The drive for individual economic expansion, especially after it found sanction in the ideas of enlightenment of the French Revolution, you know, the one where they beheaded the royalties, fostered among the local elites a keener perception of the restrictions imposed by Spanish colonialism on their own development, because they were seeing these things and they were like, what? That is allowed? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? That's allowed? That's the thought process. Like, they did at first, they didn't really think that that is something that people can do, but then here comes the French beheading their monarchs, showing that the people have power. And they're realizing, wait, we are letting these colonizers get off scot-free. So this aggravated the feeling of oppression caused by colonial policies, by the abuses and arrogance of individual officials and friars, and by the general lack of those civil liberties that the new liberal concepts led them to aspire for. Hello, Hawaiian Pizza. Thank you for lurking. I hope you have a great day ahead of you. So the grievances of the masses and the self-interest of the Principalia therefore became ingredients in the development of a new consciousness of interests, distinct and separate from those of Spain. Now, I would like you to take notice that there is a difference between the masses and the Principalia. The masses had grievances. They were the ones being abused. They were the ones being not just physically, but financially, what do you call that? Oppressed. Yes, Marie Antoinette was included in that, not dessert. So, it was more of a self-preservation thing in the physical. But for the Principalia, it was different. It was self-interest. They see the policies as something that is hindering them from getting ahead, or having a higher position, being richer, because the policy still is very, very much biased towards pure Spanish people. And even though they had like a different view of their situation, they had a common enemy. You know what they say? The enemy of your enemy is your friend. So it's kind of like that. But also, if you think about it, a lot of these principalias, new principalias anyway, or the new people who just got out of poverty, they know what these other people are going through. Now, through their propaganda work, the Ilustrados first shared, then wrested the term Filipino from the Creoles and infused it with national meaning, which later include the entire people. So, the Ilustrados, the enlightened ones, the people who were rich, so they came to different European countries to study. They took the term Filipino, which used to be something that was used to divide them, and took it as something that would unite them. Now it's no longer just Spanish who were born here, it was everyone. It's the entire people. Natives included, Chinese mestizos included, Spanish mestizos, Creoles included. Thus, the term Filipino, which had begun as a concept with narrow racial application and later developed to delineate an elite group characterized by wealth, education, and Spanish culture, finally embraced the entire nation and became a means of national identification. From then on, the term Filipino would refer to the inhabitants of the Philippine archipelago, regardless of racial strain or economic status. Hello, Dai! Welcome to the stream. We are reading and discussing the 10th chapter of Renato Constantino's book, The Philippines, a Past Revisited. Hello, alias! Welcome, welcome. Come on, sit down, have some green tea. I'm having some now. And let's read. So, as I was saying, the term Filipino, from from being a racial term, it's now very inclusive. It includes everyone in the archipelago. And when I think about it, because not just recently, but there were people who were like asking why the Philippines have kept the name Philippines when it was obviously a mark of our colonial past. Wouldn't we want to be completely free from it? I personally like the term Filipino very much. It's because it is the living proof that you can take back something that used to hurt you and use it as something to blanket yourself with, to protect yourself. It's like taking back a word, like from something that is very, very racially charged to something that is binding, that is uniting. Oh, this is The Philippines, a Past Revisited, a history book by Renato Constantino. Now, let's continue. The reform movement. The nuclear form of nationhood was found expression in agitation for reforms, although attempts to expose the evils of Spanish colonialism and particularly the abuses of the friars were made within the Philippines. The principal propaganda effort was exerted in Spain. In Spain, those who agitated for reforms could more freely express themselves. Why? Because in Spain, it's a lot more culture than what they did here in the Philippines back then. Because back then, the way they treated the Filipinos or the natives was barbaric. Moreover, Since the principal drive at this time was for reforms within the colonial system, the logical place for agitation was in the mother country. And when we say mother country, it was Spain. We still believe that we are part of Spain because we were a colony, yes. The hope that was that if the Spanish government could be made aware of what was really happening in the colony, that they were abusing us, some reforms might be forthcoming. So it wasn't like, oh, we want complete freedom. We want to be separate from you. Get the fuck out of our land, colonizers. It wasn't like that in the beginning, of course. They wanted reforms. They just wanted to be treated better. Like, in a toxic relationship, when you're still in that headspace that, you know what, this can be saved. If only he would change. If only he would stop doing this and that. If only he would stop hitting me and cursing at our kids. Well, it would change better if she left. Okay. But here's the thing. Back then, the idea of being a separate country was like, it was wild. It was very alien, the concept. And so what they wanted was a reform. Three groups formed the nucleus of the government for reforms. First, there was okay, before we discuss each one of them, okay. So these three groups have come to become known as the propaganda movement. The first was the group of suspected filibusteros, including Españoles Filipinos and Spanish mestizos, who had been banished to the Marianas during the crackdown on liberals in the wake of the Cavite Mutiny of 1872. So that's the first group. Granted executive clemency 2 years later on condition that they did not return to the Philippines. So what did they do? The majority of these men congregated in Barcelona and Madrid. They can't go to the Philippines, they go to Spain. So the second group was composed of young men who had been sent to Spain for their studies, so the Ilustrados. These two groups were augmented by refugees who left the islands to escape persecution. Among the latter, the most prominent were Graciano Lopez Haina and Marcelo H. Del Pilar. So, Graciano Lopez Haina had written a tale whose principal character was Fray Botod, or, the priest who had a big tummy. Since the word Botod in Lopez Haina's native dialect, Hiligaynon, means full-bellied, the reference to the greed of the friars were clear. The story, in fact, depicted all the vices and abuses of the Spanish priests. Of course, they weren't so happy about that. Although the tale of Fray Botod circulated only in manuscript form, it came to the attention of the objects of its satire, which is, the Spanish priests, and Lopez Haina found it expedient to leave the Philippines because he didn't want to get unalived, right? Or at the very least, he would be in jail or beaten into a pulp. He didn't want that. And since he didn't want to be persecuted for whatever the fuck he did, he left the Philippines. Marcelo H. Del Pilar, his reputation as a propagandist was already established before an order for his arrest forced him to flee the country in 1880. So, yeah, he was about to be arrested and he was like, nope, and yeeted himself out of the country. Gifted with the common touch and found ready audiences in the cockpits, the plazas, and the corner tiendas of his native Bulacan, unlike Rizal, who wrote his novels in Spanish, a fact which cut him off from most of Filipinos who did not know the language because the Spanish did not really push the Filipinos to learn Spanish. So Rizal was like, I don't know. If you're educated enough, you get to read Rizal. But if you're not, you have people like Marcelo H. del Pilar, because his propaganda, he wrote it in pamphlets in simple Tagalog, lucid, direct, and forceful. His parodies of the Our Father, Hail Mary, Apostles' Creed, and the Ten Commandments, and the Catechism, published in pamphlets, which simulated the format and size of the novenas, were highly effective propaganda. Yes, Plaridel. So imagine you were being handed this tiny little novena book, but when you open it, what's inside, the prayers, the Hail Marys, Our Father, etc., they are all like parodies. And the parodies were taking a jab at the priests and the Spanish in general. Yes, they're basically memeing the hell out of the friars. I love it. So yeah, Rizal would be like writing actual novels and stuff like that. So it's for more educated people. Um, Marcelo is more of a memer. Love that for him. And memes are as they are, as we know them today. You make a meme, if it's funny, it goes viral. And we can say that it also went viral during his time. It was highly effective. Among those who had gone to Spain to study, Jose Rizal was to emerge as a highly respected leader, smart dude. His prestige was derived from his considerable and varied intellectual gifts and was greatly enhanced by the publication in 1887 of his novel Noli Me Tangere, an incisive study of Philippine society which earned him the enmity of the friars and was promptly banned in the Philippines. So imagine you wrote something in Spanish. Your people, most of them cannot understand Spanish, so it was already limited. But the friars, upon seeing your work, they're like, "Yep, I know they can't read this, but we're banning it. We're banning it anyway. We don't want this shit." Yes, it's making us look bad. Expatriates, refugees, and students made repeated attempts to band together in associations and to establish organs through which they could project their demands for reforms. Again, they did not really demand for complete freedom, they just wanted to be treated better. Counteract the friar supported newspaper La Política de España en Filipinas, the politics of Spain in the Philippines, and refutes such anti-Filipino writers as Wenceslao Iretana, Pablo Fesed, and Vicente Barrantes. Early demands for reforms had been aired by Españoles Filipinos in El Eco Filipino, a fortnightly magazine published in Spain. Some copies reached Manila where there were a few subscribers because they already had these young men studying in Spain. So even if this is a magazine that is produced and published in Spain, it still reached the people here in the Philippines. Hello, Yomi Seller. Welcome, welcome. We are reading The Philippines, a Past Revisited by Renato Constantino. So, Españoles Filipinos, before that, that magazine that we were talking about, it was banned after 1872. Españoles Filipinos at first tried to maintain the leadership in the campaign for reforms, but the associations they formed did not prosper. In 1882, Juan Ataide, a Spaniard born in Manila, founded the Círculo Hispano-Filipino in Madrid. It's, when you think about it, it's kind of bizarre to envision this purely Spanish born, I mean Spanish men, although they're born in Manila, to be asking for reforms in behalf of the Filipinos as we know them. But you must understand that during these times, the word Filipino actually just which just applied to the Spanish born in the Philippines is now being used as a blanket term for all of those who lived in the Philippines. So whether you were pure Spanish born in the Philippines or a pure native, you are now considered a Filipino. And to them, they were like, brothers, we're all in this together. We're all in this sinking ship where we're being discriminated upon. Now, the society died practically at birth due to a shortage of funds and the lack of confidence of members in Ataide. Another attempt to organize was made by another Spaniard, Professor Miguel Moraita, who tried to form the Asociación Hispano-Filipino, inaugurated on January 12, 1889. The association lobbied successfully for the passage of some laws, such as the Mora Law, the law providing for compulsory teaching of Spanish, and another one for judicial reform. Why did they want Spanish to be taught? Because again, the Spanish, they did not really want to educate the Filipinos. They didn't see the point of teaching them Spanish. And then, if we look at it from today's lens, we're like, and so what? But back then, the people who were lobbying for change, the people who were educated, they all studied in Spain. They were reading and writing in Spanish. And it would be so much easier for them to disseminate these ideas, this information, the education, if the local people were also educated in Spanish. Myon, gandang umaga, Myon. Hello, hello. Good morning, sweetie. Okay, so its members campaigned actively for Philippine representation in the Cortes. Moraita's association, however, failed to secure the support of many Filipinos, among them Jose Rizal and Antonio Luna, mainly because its membership was composed mostly of Spaniards. So they were like, we're not supporting that. That's kind of elitist. Now that the term Filipino has been made inclusive, shouldn't it be more inclusive, this association? Why is it all Spaniards? So, yes, these were mainly Españoles Filipinos, an older group of retired officers, merchants, and landowners living in Spain. They favor the use of tact and prudence in asking for reforms. The young Filipinos felt that the Spaniards and the Creoles were too moderate or were unwilling to risk the displeasure of the Spanish authorities because, they didn't want to get bonked or anything. But the Filipinos, they were like, fuck that. The Spanish mestizos were caught in the middle, some eventually electing to join forces with the Filipinos. So the desire to form a purely Filipino organization was fulfilled with the establishment in Barcelona on December 13, 1888 of La Solidaridad. Everyone knows about this. This organization was a sort of rival of Moraita's Madrid group, although the two organizations joined together in a petition addressed to the Minister of the Colonies asking for representation in the Cortes. They wanted a voice in the Cortes. Abolition of censorship of the press, because censoring the press, that's how oppressors keep everything under control. And the prohibition of the practice of deporting citizens merely through administrative orders. I can see that people are flirting in the chat. Good for you. The president of La Solidaridad was Rizal's cousin, Galicano Apacible, Among the other officers were Graciano Lopez Jaina, vice president, and Mariano Ponce, treasurer. Rizal in London at the time was named honorary president because, he was in London. What can he do? Unfortunately, Apasible could not hold the wrangling reformists together. It took the prestige of Rizal and the political wisdom of Del Pilar to unite the people Filipino in Spain and coordinate their efforts because they were wild. They were smart, but they were also wild. So they needed someone like Rizal and Del Pilar to finally make them sit down and work together. Okay, now let's talk about the propaganda movement. The early attempts to publish a propaganda organ was a failure. Just as the association had been, and for the same reason, lack of funds. They didn't have the money. They didn't have unity, differences of opinion, petty jealousies, and personal ambitions. Although they meant well, they were still people with their own personal ambitions. The Revista del Círculo Hispano-Filipino died after its second issue, and the weekly España and Filipinas fared scarcely better. But finally, in February 1889, the Filipino propagandists were able to get together behind a new publication which they called La Solidaridad, and which for its more than 5 years of existence became the principal organ of the propaganda movement. It was founded on February 15, 1889 and existed up to November 15, 1895. Its first editor was Graciano Lopez Jaina, but he was soon succeeded by Marcelo H. Del Pilar, our buddy. La Solidaridad was a political propaganda paper with a liberal, reformist orientation, dedicated to the task of fighting reaction in all its form. So when we say reformist, they just wanted change as well. They were not like, fuck, these people were bombing y'all. No, 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 no. They were like, we just want change. Oh, thank you for the hydrate pizza. I have green tea with me. The staff of La Solidaridad defined its objectives in the following words. Modest, very modest indeed, are our aspirations. The program is of the utmost simplicity to fight all forms of reaction, to impede all retrogression, to hail and to accept all liberal ideas, and to defend all progress. In a word, to be one more propagandist of all the ideals of democracy in the hope that these might hold sway over all nations here and across the seas. Okay, that is their objective. Through the pages of La Solidaridad, the propaganda movement demanded for the Filipinos freedom of the press, of speech, and of assembly, equality before the law, participation of the affairs of government, social and political freedom. So when some boomer says on Facebook that, Rizal said that ang kabataan ay pag-asa ng bayan, blah, 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 but the kabataan nowadays are activists, blah, blah, blah. You can tell them to kindly please shut the fuck up because Rizal supports this. If he were alive today, he would be one of those very, very loud people on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, fighting them and talking about press freedom. Rizal would not support them rejoicing over the shutdown of ABS-CBN or whatever news outlet. Okay, where were we? So, aside from press freedom, what did they want? Of speech and of assembly. What does that mean? The right to speak out and go out together and rally without being assaulted by the government. Assembly means to assemble together as people. Equality before the law, participation in the affairs of the government. Let me repeat, participation in the affairs of the government. Rizal and his buddies believe that we, as people, should be allowed to participate in the affairs of the government. Social and political freedom. The freedom to choose. The propagandists also ask for reforms in all branches of the government. The promotion of education, a stop to the abuses of the Guardia Civil, and an end to the arbitrary deportation of citizens. The writers of La Solidaridad directed their strongest invectives at the friars as the enemies of enlightenment and liberal reforms. Okay. Okay, assimilation and representation. But despite all their criticisms and complaints, the propagandists' goal was still assimilation. Yeah, they were mad about a lot of things, but being part of Spain wasn't one of them. They still wanted to be part of Spain, but they just want to be treated better, treated equally. That is why they were asking for Philippine representation in the Spanish Cortes. The preoccupation with education was also part of the drive for historical Hispanization, which would facilitate assimilation. So that's also the reason why they wanted the Filipinos to learn Spanish, to be educated, because if we are going to be part of Spain, might as well speak Spanish so we could communicate with them better, so we could assimilate. That was the thought process. Spain was still their mother country. They asked for reform so that their countrymen would not be alienated from her. Rizal captured the essence of the reformist anxiety in an article published in La Solidaridad, in which he appealed to the Spanish government to, let's quote, grant liberty so that no one may have the right to conspire, deputies so that their complaints and their grumblings may not accumulate in the bosom of their families to become the cause of future storms. Treat the people well, teach them the sweetness of peace so that they may love and sustain it. If you persist in your system of banishments, incarcerations, and assaults without cause, if you punish them for your own faults, you make them despair, you remove their abhorrence for revolutions and turmoils, you harden them, and you arouse them to struggle. So, that's how he put it. Masonry was an integral part of the reform government. The Masonic movement, which in Spain was essentially anti-friar, attracted the Filipino propagandists who saw the friars as the pillars of reaction. The Filipino Masons in Spain were responsible for the organization of Masonic lodges in the Philippines, which echoed the reformist demands and declared their goal to be that of seeing the Philippines become a province of Spain. Again, they wanted to be a province of Spain, not to be separated from Spain. That was the original plan. Thank you for the hydrate, Miyaki. These lodges, in turn, helped to fund the work of propaganda in Spain. Reformist demands. So the propaganda movement could not have been more than a movement for reforms. Since most of its leaders belonged to the generally wealthy clase ilustrada, the illuminated ones, the ones who were educated, their primary aim was to secure for their class participation in political rule and a greater share in economic benefits. since their own social acceptability was premised on their Hispanization. They were still working with the system that the Spaniards made, that the more Hispanic you are, the better. It was to be expected that their cultural demand would be for Filipinos to be accorded the right to Spanish culture. They were for cultural assimilation and for the transformation of the Philippines into a province of Spain, provided that certain abuses were curtailed and certain administrative reforms instituted, including representation for the colony in the Spanish Cortes. Although the demands of the Ilustrado reformists were necessarily delimited by their class position at that time that they were voicing them in Spain, these demands were progressive. It was only when the people had determined to wage a revolution and had adopted a clearly separatist goal that continued advocacy for reforms became reactionary. The propagandists failed to achieve their principal objective, obviously, that of prodding the Spanish government to reform the colonial administration. That wasn't happening. It has been argued that since the propaganda writers failed to reach the masses of their countrymen, their influence may be regarded as minimal, and for this reason, there was hardly any continuity between the propaganda and the revolution. People are arguing that they are two separate things. Several factors did undermine the effectiveness of the propaganda movement. Among them, the perennial lack of funds. Again, these keeps on popping up. They didn't have funds. And the bickerings among the propagandists themselves. They were not exactly bestest of friends. So, for example, as a result of misunderstanding between Del Pilar and Rizal, the latter stopped contributing to La Solidaridad before it had completed 2 years of its existence. Rizal was like, nope, not gonna do the La Solidaridad thing anymore. A few months later, Antonio Luna, who was Rizal's bestie, he was like, so my homie doesn't want to do it anymore, so I'm also quitting. And then we have Lopez Haina. He's kind of undependable. He had alternated between collaboration and indifference. Finally, he severed all his ties with the propaganda movement when a promised pension from Manila supporters of the paper did not materialize. He even went so far as to attack his former colleagues. They were not besties at all. Henceforth, he devoted himself, but without success, to the fulfillment of his ambition of being elected to the Cortes. Hello, Gun. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for the hydrate. Let me just drink the last of my green tea. And thank you for the stretch. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Okay, let's continue. Certainly, an important factor limiting the influence of the propagandists was the fact that they wrote in Spanish, because again, not everyone in the Philippines, not all the natives, know how to read, write, or understand Spanish, a language virtually unknown among the masses. Furthermore, censorship seriously limited the inflow of such reading matter and made possession of it very risky. Like you can get arrested for owning it. Good morning, Killer Current. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Right? Like not everyone learned Spanish and they were writing in that language. What did they expect? Silly man. Furthermore, oh yeah, so we already talked about, censorship and having those items with you, even if you cannot read it, it can get you persecuted. But despite all the foregoing, the influences of the propaganda on the revolution cannot be discounted. So it is true that La Solidaridad itself, Rizal's novels, and other propaganda material had limited circulation. Again, they had limited funds, so there would be limited copies. They wrote in Spanish, so not all the masses could read it. And also, there's the fact that you're not allowed to read them. Those were banned, and you have to hide it. If you get found out that you have it, you're gonna be questioned, probably jailed. But these works reach the local ilustrados, those who have studied and who in most instances came to lead the revolutionary forces in their provinces. So, yeah, it trickled down eventually. Maybe not the exact words, but the sentiments, the ideas trickled down to the masses. The fundraising efforts of local committees and Masonic lodges and the clandestine secret attempts to contribute these materials involved more individuals in the campaign for reforms. The very attempts of the government to stop the entry of La Solidaridad and prevent its distribution highlighted the lack of freedoms that the propagandists were condemning. If readership was small, seepage of information to the other groups certainly occurred. And because what the propagandists wrote were accurate reflections of reality, a feeling of empathy developed wherever news of their work was heard. People were realizing that, oh, they're writing what we're experiencing. Hello, Takodachi131. Thank you for following. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome to the stream. We are currently reading chapter 10 of Renato Constantino's The Philippines, a Past Revisited. And we are talking about how La Solidaridad and how it's prevented by censorship that actually led people to, actually learn about it secretly. Where were we? The articulation of their own feelings of oppression heightened the ferment of the people. And herein lay the continuity between reformism and revolution, despite their diametrically opposed means and goals. Now you have the reformists in one hand who are just telling the government, the Spanish government, that, you're treating our people poorly. In fact, you're treating them like shit. We want changes, but we don't really want to separate ourselves from you. In fact, we want to be a province of Spain, but we have people who wanted revolution here in the Philippines. Although they're hearing that, they're reading that, that's not what came to them. They're like, you know what we are experiencing is valid. Other people, they know that we are being treated like this, we're being treated poorly, they want that to change, but they didn't agree with the part that we should be part of Spain. They wanted freedom, they wanted total separation from Spain. And while the reformists wanted to do this peacefully by talking to the government of Spain, the means of the revolutionaries were obviously different. They wanted to do it with blood. Hello, thank you for following Magic Meyer. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome to the stream. We are reading Renato Constantino's The Philippines, a Past Revisited. Now let's continue. Rizal's Liga, or La Liga Filipina. Do you remember that from school? So, when upon his return to the Philippines in July 1892, Rizal organized La Liga Filipina. This constituted a forward step in the reformist ideas of the times, in the sense that the new group sought to involve the people directly in the reform government. I mean, the reform movement. Again, they wanted reform. They don't want separation. They just wanted to be treated better, to be a province of Spain instead of like a poor little colony that Spain steps on. Many elements of society who were anxious for change were attracted to the Liga. Among them, Andres Bonifacio, who became one of the founders of the organization. Now, I know a lot of you have heard about how Andres is a fanboy of Rizal. Yes, that's kind of true because they have indeed based some of their, you know, what do you call that? Their aspirations and whatever because of reading the things that Rizal have written. Now, as listed in the Constitution, Rizal prepared the Liga's aims were number one, to unite the whole archipelago into one compact, vigorous, and homogeneous body. Because again, we were not united back then. We were separate. We didn't even see each other as like from the same nation. It just so happened that, oh, we were all colonized by Spain. Number two, mutual protection in every want and necessity. Understandable. Number three, defense against violence and injustice. Number four, encouragement of instruction, agriculture, and commerce. And number five, study and application of reforms. So that was the Liga's aim. As Rizal envisioned it, the League was to be a sort of mutual aid, self help little society dispensing scholarship funds and legal aid, loaning capital, and setting up cooperatives. So it's, if you would think about it, it's kind of like the Balangay, Balangay Live. We are a little self-help society. We help each other whenever we can. We're not really, a company. We don't have someone backing us up. We back each other up. So the league was kind of like that. These were innocent, even naive objectives that could hardly alleviate the social ills of those times. But the Spanish authorities were so alarmed, they were very, very paranoid about this, that they arrested Rizal on July 6, 1892, 4 days just after the Liga was organized. With Rizal deported to Dapitan, the Liga became inactive until, through the efforts of Domingo Franco and Andres Bonifacio, it was reorganized. Apolinario Mabini became the secretary of the Supreme Council. Upon his suggestion, the organization decided to declare its support for La Solidaridad and the reforms it advocated. Raise funds for the paper because, again, they didn't have funds, and defray the expenses of deputies advocating reforms for the country before the Spanish Cortes. The split. Okay. At first, the Liga was quite active. Bonifacio, in particular, exerted great efforts to organize chapters in various districts of Manila. A few months later, however, the Supreme Council of the Liga dissolved the society. The reformist leaders found out that most of the popular councils which Bonifacio had organized were no longer willing to send funds to Madrid propagandists because, like Bonifacio, they had become convinced that peaceful agitation for reforms was futile. So, they were not seeing eye to eye. You have to remember the Liga, La Liga Filipina, was founded by Rizal, and they were reformists. They wanted change, but peaceful change. They wanted to be part of Spain, but Bonifacio and his boys were like, yeah, that's not gonna work out. Apolinario Mabini is a paralyzed genius, just like Professor X. That's cute. But I should agree. Hold on, where were we? Afraid that the more radical rank and file members might capture the organization and unwilling to involve themselves in an enterprise which would surely invite reprisals from the authorities, the leaders of the Liga opted for the solution. So, TLDR, the other people were like, yeah, we want violence now. And they were like, the leaders were like, nope, that's not what we're about. We're dissolving this organization. Goodbye. So the Liga membership split into two groups. The conservatives formed the Cuerpo de Compromisarios, which pledged to continue supporting La Solidaridad, while the radicals, led by your boy Bonifacio, devoted themselves to a new and secret society, which we all know, the Katipunan. So, yes, the Katipunan is directly split off from the League. So, the Katipunan, which Bonifacio had organized, it was made the very day Rizal was deported to Dapitan. With the shift from the Liga to Katipunan, the goal was transformed from assimilation to separation. They didn't want to be a province. They want to be on their own. The means underwent a similarly drastic change from peaceful agitation, wanting to be included in the Cortes for reforms, it became armed revolution. The reformisms of the Ilustrados gave way to the revolution of the masses. So you can't be very mad at them. You can't be mad that they wanted change and they wanted to be part of Spain. Because that is what led to the actual revolution. So if you are out there on Twitter or on Facebook being a keyboard warrior and people are telling you that you're not doing anything, you're just there behind your screen, go, if you really believe what you're talking about, go out there in the streets, they're wrong. Because simply talking about it, you simply just airing out your grievances, other people are hearing that, and that can transform into something else. So the words that you say on the internet, they don't end there. They live on beyond what you have made them to mean. The desire for separation from Spain became more acute as the masses became convinced that the only solution to their problems was revolution. This revolutionary consciousness was the fruit of centuries of practice, but its ideological articulation came from the reformist Ilustrados, because as you already know, or we've already talked about the other ones in the previous streams, this was not the first revolution. There were a lot of mini revolutions. There were ones that were actually very successful, that they lasted for a long time, and there were like those that lasted only 4 days. But yes, there had been revolutions before the Katipunan. But the Katipunan, as we know, was born from reformist ideas. These reformist ideas obviously mutated and changed. The stage was set for an anti-colonial national revolution whose ebb and flow would depend on which of the two currents was temporarily dominant: the revolutionary decisiveness of the masses, or the temporizing and reformist nature of their allies. Ambivalent classes. Economic progress had brought into being in Philippine society a number of transitional economic and social groups composed of Creoles, Chinese mestizos, urbanized Filipinos. These formed a fairly broad petty bourgeoisie stratum which occupied a social and economic position between peninsulares and the masses. So they're like the in between. They're not exactly natives who don't have anything and are being abused, but they're also not pure Spanish people who came from Spain to come over here to do colonizer things. So yeah, they were like the in between. Included therein were landowners, inquilinos, shopkeepers, merchants, employees, and professionals. They were joined by some who, by Philippine standards, were already considered affluent, and by others who, though quite poor, had economic and social aspirations akin to those of their better situated countrymen because of the nature of their employment, their education, and urbanization. Many ilustrados belong to this stratum. This accounts for the seesaw attitudes they displayed during the various phases of the revolution. They were ambivalent in their attitudes towards the colonizer. This explains the confused stand many of them took during this part of Philippine history. When we use the term ilustrado, we refer to this broad stratum with uneven consciousness. They were not like thinking of the same thing. They didn't see eye to eye, as we learned earlier. They were even fighting during La Solidaridad. Since their orientation vacillated between the ruling and the lower classes, the Ilustrados, like the rising classes from which they emerged, were both reformists and revolutionary. Their grievances impelled them to relate to the people, but because they regarded themselves as the social superiors of the masses, they also related to the ruling power. They were willing to join the Peninsulares if some of their political and economic demands could be granted, but at the same time, they identified themselves with the people in order to secure the maximum concessions from the colonial establishment. While they identify themselves with upper class Filipinos by virtue of actual economic status or personal ambition and therefore already had interests to defend, the Ilustrados had to include the plaints of their less fortunate brothers in presenting their case against colonial injustice. Whether they were Creoles or Chinese mestizos or part of the indigenous elite, they were all minority groups. Therefore, identification with the masses whose customs and life they were familiar with became the only logical channel for them if they were to be an effective force. The people could not be ignored. Ilustrado's strength could be measured only in terms of support by the vast majority. And if you would look at it today, the same is happening. Those who are educated, no matter how hard they try, if the masses are not in support of what they're fighting for, nothing will happen. The Ilustrados therefore presented the case of the entire people without distinguishing the strata to which they themselves belonged. So they identified with the masses. For all the foregoing reasons, the Ilustrados wavered between assimilation and separation, between reform and revolution, bearing individual exceptions. We may say that the higher the economic status, the stronger the tendency toward assimilation and reformism. This, incidentally, was evident in the split of La Liga, where the wealthier members form the Cuerpo de Compromisarios, those who were mostly reformists. They wanted to be included as a province of Spain, and the less prosperous, those who were not from money, joined Bonifacio in the Katipunan. So the masses, for their part, readily accepted many of the teachings of the Ilustrados. They themselves, though tempered in the struggles of the centuries, did not yet have the capability to integrate their experiences. Their articulate Ilustrados compatriots gave them expression to their thoughts, feelings, and aspirations, and the masses quickly responded by giving their enthusiastic support to these leaders who crystallized for them the injustices they have been subjected to for hundreds of years, and for the first time opened for them the possibility of a better life by leading them in a national confrontation against the Spanish oppressors. Because as you know, the masses, they were not educated. They didn't learn to express themselves. To them, that is a foreign idea. But they were aware that they were being oppressed. What the Ilustrados did for them is to put into words that oppression and how they felt about it. Let's just move this page up. Moreover, a long experience with Spanish hierarchical organizations had accustomed the masses to regard direction from their social superiors as natural and proper. This explains why it was easier later on for the wealthier and more opportunistic members of the native elite to preempt the leadership of the revolution and redirect it toward compromise. It should also be noted that among the urban masses, no distinct class consciousness existed as yet, inasmuch as the predominantly commercial economy produced a diffusion and admixture of strivings. In so far as the peasants were concerned, their consciousness was similar to that of peasants all over the world. The nature of their activities and their isolation militated against their developing an ideology of their own. Because if you are just striving to survive, going beyond survival is a thought that, it's hard to think about tomorrow when you're just trying to survive today. And that is why when they had these ilustrados voice out their concerns for them and had these ideas of going separate from mother Spain, they were very, very receptive. But because of their incessant struggles against oppression over the centuries, because of their increasing misery, and because Bonifacio's call for separation from Spain was a simple and direct solution which they readily understood, the peasants quickly rallied to the struggle. Yes. But there were also peasants who joined counter-revolutionary groups such as Guardias de Honor. Okay, so basically, let's read. The Ilustrados are political representatives of the people to bribe to communicate with the Spaniards for better treatment. Yes, the Ilustrados, they were rich people, right? They came from money, and they were called Ilustrados because they were enlightened, they were educated in Spain. And since they had Spanish, more Spanish culture, their idea was we're still part of Spain. We we should be treated as such. We should be treated as a province. They should stop abusing us, and that's what they were lobbying for. But because things and people are changing, there were people like Bonifacio who were like, yeah, that wanting to be a province of Spain, that's not working out. We want to be separate. So yeah, there was like two different movements going on at the same time. Hello, GatoBot 2. Thank you for following. I hope you're not an actual bot. Yes, you did, honey. You did. This is a history lesson. Welcome to the history lesson, I suppose. So, urban ideas and rural masses. It should be noted that at its inception, the focus of the revolutionary movement was in the eight Tagalog provinces, which were most penetrated by urban ideas. I don't understand, Gatobot. Are you an actual bot? Or what are you? I'm going to have to delete that. Please don't post um what do you call this, ads in my chat, honey. Anyway, um I'm going to continue reading. The revolution spread rapidly and often spontaneously to other areas, shows that through centuries, the desire to throw off the Spanish yoke had become universal. They were not wanted anywhere. When urban radicalism spreads to the rural areas, the rural masses are usually able to maintain the struggle long after the metropolitan districts have been subdued. This was the case in the Philippines, but it must be noted that many such peasant uprisings were led by elements from the local elite who were still acknowledged as traditional leaders. Now, again, when we talk about traditional leaders, we are talking about the sons and sons and sons, the great great grandchildren of the leaders of their little societies back then. Oh, one of my mods, my brother from another mother, Mino Minokawa, is alive. Yes, thank you. So the leaders of the ancient pre-colonial societies, they still maintain their status, sort of, not really. It kind of changed, but they were denoted as like socially higher than regular folk. They were the local elite, and when the ideas of revolution spread to the provinces, since there are less colonizers, Spanish people in the provinces, they were able to maintain the fire. You know, it kept on going. Plus, there were mountains. We have talked about this. If you go up the mountains, they would not follow you there. They didn't have the manpower. So, holding a revolution for longer was possible. So, urban sense of solidarity. In Manila, a greater awareness of common deprivation and oppression was made possible by economic progress itself. The economy was in its mercantile capitalist stages, but there were already quite large concentrations of workers in some factories and in stevedoring companies. When Spain inaugurated her policy of developing the colony, one of her earliest projects was setting up of a tobacco monopoly, because remember, in the beginning they did not want to develop the Philippines as, you know, a mercantile district or whatever, because they didn't see any profits from it. The people were not used to trading in that sense where you want to do it for profit, because before they came, we were a subsistence economy, meaning we farmed, yes, maybe we tend to cattle, yes, but only for our own consumption, and those that we have in excess, we can trade them or we can loan them, but it's more of a show of wealth rather than to acquire more wealth. So when they came along, the people were obviously culture shocked by the economics that the Spanish people brought. But later on, they realized that, oh, they are capable of doing this and that because the English came here, they were trading with the people, the Chinese were also here doing some trading, and Spain was like, you know what, I want to cash in on that. Now you cannot trade with them anymore. I'm going to trade with you. I'm going to monopolize everything. So that's how it started. So since this monopoly controlled, besides the planting of tobacco, also the manufacture of cigars, cigarettes, and the government set up 5 factories in Manila, starting with a few hundred workers. These factories were employing a total of around 20,000 workers during the years from 1850 to 1882. Factory operations featured an assembly line with well-defined division of labor. So, this type of factory setting was still emerging because before this, although we started to trade with people, they were just like planting and then harvesting and then trading. But now there is an assembly line involved. The convergence of thousands of workers in a single place necessarily developed in them recognition of their solidarity as interests as Filipinos. So whether you are from Manila or from the provinces, they began seeing each other as, brothers, though not yet as proletarians. This inchoate sense of solidarity provided form to the blind, spontaneous unrest of earlier years. Later, it was to constitute a base of support for the Katipunan. Ah, well, not exactly the first to do it. Here's the thing. Before Spain brought these things to the Philippines, the English went here and started the same, kinda, with textile. Because the English were like doing their whole textile thing in other places. When they went here, they started doing the same. And Spain was jealous. And so they're like, nope, you're not doing that anymore. We're using all this land for tobacco. Basically, Spain's actions to develop the Philippines, if I would um, have to describe it, is reactionary. Like, we were stagnant for so long, and until they realized that other countries were earning and benefiting from the productivity of the Filipino, they didn't want anything to do with that. They just didn't think that the Philippines was viable for profit. And when they saw that they're like, hey, wait, this is our colony. We should be the one profiting from them. Where were we? So, a more cohesive core of the oppressed was slowly being engendered by the capitalist enterprise. A definite working class was in the offing, although the milieu still retained many of the hierarchical ideas that were a residue of the feudal atavism of the Spanish administration. Depression in the countryside. So, in the countryside, perhaps more than the city, economic progress had depressed the living standard of the masses, both absolutely and relatively. So, we have kind of already talked about this, but the little capitalism, mercantilism thing that Spain was benefiting from the products of the people wasn't really helping the people at all. They were still oppressed. The successful development of cash crops for export intensified exploitation and suffering in a number of ways. So, yes, we already talked about this, but this is just more exploitation in different ways. Land rentals were increased from year to year. tenants, the Filipinos, forced by the landowners to concentrate on cash crops, were no longer sure of their food supply. So instead of planting crops that they can eat throughout the year, they just have to plant tobacco or whatever Spain wants them to produce. Cottage industries, principally weaving, which augmented farm income, were destroyed by competition from imports because, again, the thing back then was the English making textile, and since it's cheaper, the people are going to buy that instead of local textiles. And so the weaving industry died. Um, Above all, the export crop economy increased the value of land and the desirability of owning as many hectares as possible. The religious orders and other Spanish landowners, the native principalias, and the rising class of Chinese mestizos all took advantage of the various land laws and mortgage laws and the Pacto de Retroventa to dispossess ignorant and poor peasants of their small plots of land. It ranged from outright land grabbing to putting the peasants in debt because the situation was not very, very good. And then they would take the land as payment. So, yes, a lot of people lost their lands. Unrest was particularly strong in the religious estates. In 1888, the tenants of Calamba were dispossessed by the Dominicans. There were some agrarian uprisings against the Jesuits. These were led by inquilinos or middlemen landowners, but their activities against the religious corporations drew support from the masses. Now, if you would remember in the beginning of this book, we already discussed how the priests would use their status and power to grab land. They can easily say that, oh, this dying farmer confessed to me that they want to donate their land to the church, so it's mine now, even if the dying man didn't say anything. What are they going to say? The priest is lying? Or the dying man actually donates the land because they were convinced by the priest that that would grant them entry to heaven. So, yeah, a lot of those things were happening. Now, let's go to the land question. It is not difficult to imagine the bitter anger of poor people forced to work as tenants of the new owners on land their ancestors had regarded as their own for generations. Imagine you have a piece of land given to you by your father, given to him by his father's father, and your ancestors before that. And then this priest from a strange land comes over and takes it from you. But now you still have to toil in that land. You still have to plant in it, work on it, but it's not yours anymore. You became a servant of your own land. So, understandably, they were angry. Resentment was particularly great against the land grabbing activities of the friars that we talked about and against their other exploitative practices. Not only were they Spaniards, they were religious against whom the charges of hypocrisy and non-compliance with their own preaching might be leveled. To make matters worse, they were absentee landlords who left the management and supervision of their estates to administrators whose efficiency was measured in terms of their ability to extract more profit. And these administrators were not exactly kind people. They would use that position to extract more from the farmer who used to own the land so that they can pocket something, right? So, yeah, the farmers, the previous owners of the land were not in a good situation, not at all. In his memoirs of the revolution, Isabelo de los Reyes described some of the exploitative practices of the friar estate administrators. Let's read. In San Juan del Monte, the scene of the first battles near Manila, I was told that the ground rent for one loang, 10 square fathoms of farmland was 4 pesos a year. Furthermore, the hacienderos imposed a surcharge of 10 reals vellon for every mango tree planted by the inquilino. 2.5 reals for every sapling of bamboo, and 35 cents for every ilang-ilang tree, which is planted only for its flower. Thank you for following Turfy's Key. It is reported of the friar hacienderos of Cavite that in cases where the ground rent is payable in money, they assess it on the basis of an arbitrary price for paddy or hulled rice, which they fix themselves, and if a tenant refuses to agree to this, they take back the land which he has under lease, land which he had been developing all this time at his own expense. If the ground rent is payable in kind, the lay brother in charge of collecting it has sample caban placed in a vessel of water. If any grain flowed to the surface, the entire crop is considered to have many of these hollow or empty grains. The rice is then winnowed by means of a high-powered winnowing machine, which blows away much good grain to the inquilino's loss. Moreover, the rice soaked in water is not counted in the delivery, for it is considered customary to take it for the shendero's horses as a gift. So yeah, a lot of bullshit, right? The importance of the land question and the depth of the grievance against the friar landowners is evident from the fact that the first provinces that rose in revolt were those in which there were extensive friar estates. So the more friar estates, the more abuses. The more abuses, the more likely that the people would revolt. Let me just take a sip of water. And then let's continue. Immediate causes. The resentment that had been building up over the years against the Spanish colonialism and against the friars reached a peak towards the end of the 19th century was due to a number of immediate causes. Like, it's been bubbling up under the surface, but what brought it to light? An economic depression had set in during the period from 1891 to 1895, which was characterized by an unstable currency and exchange fluctuations. So you see, an unstable economy can really, really rile up the people. I mean, look at what country is that? Is it Venezuela? Yeah. Hungry people don't make very, very good pets. This was especially hard on the Filipino laborer and the small producer. Even the higher wages since 1898 compensated only partly for the previous hardships imposed on the Filipino worker by a declining medium of exchange. And of course, by 1898, any amelioration was too late. They've been suffering for too long. During the recession, hemp and sugar prices fell disastrously, while the prices of imported goods rose because of the unfavorable exchange. So this was really, really bad for them because the hemp and sugar, they were local products and they were not being priced nicely, while the imported goods, they became so expensive. So what are they going to do? Scarcity plus the higher cost of importation raised the price of rice, thus compounding the people's difficulties. Indigo production was paralyzed, and the canker which attacked the coffee plant drove coffee planters to bankruptcy. So, you know, coffee industry also tanking. In June and July of 1896, a locust infestation destroyed the rice fields and the provinces of Central Luzon. Despite this calamity, which had come on top of a drought, so imagine there are these things going on, the friar landowners still refused to condone even a part of the rent, and in certain instances even demanded an increase. So instead of maybe lowering the land rent even just a little, because the people were not earning as much as they did, they were like, nope, we're not making it lower. In fact, I want an increase. That's what they said. So misery and desperation rallied the peasantry of Luzon to the cause of the Katipunan. Convergence of grievances. The economic crisis that aggravated the unrest of the masses also affected the native middle and upper classes. Aside from their own economic reverses, the misery of their countrymen gave greater impetus to their own resentments and encouraged them to make common cause with the people. The Ilustrado drive for political and economic parity with the Spaniard had manifested itself during the propaganda period in demands for reforms, which had in turn been partially inspired by Spanish demands for reform of their own government. So you see, the Spanish people who were living in Spain, they were not so happy about what's going on with them. So they were demanding reforms, and the Filipinos were like, hey, we are under Spain too. So I guess we're also demanding reforms. But the reform measures were too partial and came too late. We've been, abused for 300 years already, were for the most part impractical and or unsuited to Philippine conditions and were often not implemented at all. If a governor general was opposed to a given decree, he could delay its implementation in the hope that a political change in Spanish capital would result in its repeal. And they didn't have internet back then, So if he decides to keep the decree to himself and to the few who know about it and not tell it to the people, how would they know? They could just wait for the Spanish government to change its mind. Hello, Happy Bread. So these swings in Spanish politics from reaction to liberalism and back again raised the Filipinos' hopes for reform only to doom them to disappointment. Abuses and corruption were, however, constant ingredients in both liberal and reactionary administrations. Filipino professionals had a special grievance. Filipino university graduates seldom received government positions. We have been talking about this, even if they were equal in terms of credentials, they would not. They would not get the position. It would be given to someone who is actually Spanish. The few lawyers and physicians who were given employment had only temporary appointments. The grievances of each class flowed together to form one common stream of national protest. Conditions were ripe for the advent of a revolutionary movement. Bonifacio and his group were therefore able to organize the Katipunan with a wider mass base. Now let's talk about the Katipunan. So, an analysis of the ideology of the Katipunan must begin with a look into the class background of its leaders, who are the ones behind it, and the ideological influences that helped to shape their thinking. Now, during the first election of the Katipunan, the following officers were chosen. So we have Jodato Arellano, who was the president. Our boy Andy Andres Bonifacio is the comptroller. Ladislao Diwa is the fiscal. Chodoro Plata, secretary, and Valentin Diaz is the treasurer. The original leadership of the Katipunan may be classified as lower to middle class. Oh, that's great, Happy. If you have like any insights, you can share it to everyone. Now, Giodato Arellano, its first president, we rarely hear about him, studied bookkeeping at the Ateneo Municipal and upon graduation worked as an assistant clerk in the Artillery Corps. He had been the secretary of La Liga Filipina, Rizal's little project group to help each other that eventually got disbanded because he was arrested 4 days later. And it was in his house where the Katipunan was formed. So, it was his house. He became the president. Chodoro Plata was the nephew of Manangoria, Gregoria de Jesus, Bonifacio's second wife. His father was a mail carrier and studied at the Escuela Municipal, where he completed the Segunda Enseñanza, he was first employed as a clerk in Binondo. He later became a clerk of the courts of first instance of Mindoro. So, we're just like looking at his work. He was always a clerk. That was his last post before he joined the revolution at the instance of Bonifacio. Now let's talk about Ladislao Diwa, the fiscal. Ladislao was an employee of the court of Quiapo and subsequently became a clerk of court in Pampanga, where he proselytized for the Katipunan. He had worked actively under Bonifacio in La Liga Filipina. Yes, that's right. Because, like, as we have talked about earlier, the Katipunan was more like a branch of group because of La Liga and how it was disbanded because the ones who were richer wanted more reform, and the ones who were like still middle class but on the lower end were more like, hell yeah, we want a revolution. And La Liga, as we know it, is more of like, okay, let's help each other. Let's gather funds so that you can go to school or whatever. We will also send funds to La Solidaridad, stuff like that. So, yeah, they were not like just your regular workers. They were actually very, very educated people, but their statuses in life were not exactly the same. Yes. So this was the middle class, but they gained a lot of support from the masses because the masses needed like people to voice out their grievances. Where were we? Um, so again, Ladislao was a clerk in Pampanga where he was the one proselytizing for the Katipunan, and he worked under Bonifacio for La Liga. Now, Valentin Diaz, the treasurer, was also a court clerk. He helped to draw up the statutes of the Katipunan. Now let's talk about my boy, Andy, Andres Bonifacio, the comptroller. So Bonifacio's own lower middle class origins may be gleaned from his biography. His mother was a Spanish mestiza who used to work as a cabecilla in a cigarette factory. So they were not exactly like native or poor. His father was a tailor and had served as a teniente mayor of Tondo. Bonifacio was born in Tondo in 1863, and the early death of his parents forced him to quit school. So he was not exactly uneducated. He was actually studying, but he had to stop so that he could support his brothers and sisters. Bonifacio first earned his livelihood by making walking canes and paper fans, which he himself peddled. So I guess that's why he gained this image of being a poor person, but they actually came from the middle class. It's just that his circumstances led him to actually doing this. Later, he worked as a messenger for Fleming and and Company, and as a salesman of tar and other goods sold by the same firm. His last job before the revolution was a bodeguero or warehouse man for Fresel and Company. Netizer! Yes, let's go. Bonifacio is from Tondo. Where are we again? Okay. Poverty prevented him from going beyond the second year of high school because, again, his parents died. But he was an avid reader, especially on the subject of revolution. When, because of his revolutionary activities, the Guardia Civil Veterana of Manila searched his home, because, they were very paranoid, they found among his papers copies of revolutionary speeches, Masonic documents, a collection of La Solidaridad, and letters of Luna, Del Pilar, and Rizal. Among his books were Noli and El Fili, Les Miserables, I dreamed a dream in years gone by. Yes, that Les Miserables by Victor Hugo and The Wandering Jew by Eugene Sue. So these are all talking about revolution. And obviously, the authorities were alarmed. He also had biographies of presidents of the United States, books on the French Revolution, on international law, and on religion. So even if he stopped studying, you know that he is not a man who is just like a regular seller or vendor on the streets. He is educating himself. Let's go to Del Pilar or Plaridel. So, the ideas of Marcelo H. Del Pilar exerted a strong influence on Bonifacio. Among the propagandists, it was Del Pilar who ultimately saw the futility of fighting for reforms and was veering towards revolution. So, we talked about this earlier. Not everyone in the Ilustrados, not everyone who call themselves the Filipinos were like seeing eye to eye. Most of them, they were like, we want to be part of Spain. But there are people who are like Del Pilar, who's like, yeah, I don't think that's working out. Let us revolt. Now, where are we? His chosen style of work, proof of his understanding of the masses, made this development possible. Because as we have proved time and time again, um, any sort of revolution or change must include the masses. Hold on, where are we? His, his experience in mass propaganda before he was forced to leave the country made him regard the reformists' work in Spain only as a first stage. Because he was like yeeted off his country because he was doing propaganda, so he knows firsthand that this is not going to work out. Whatever you're doing, that is just like a preparatory stage. Hold on, let me just. Oh, kaano-ano niya si Goyo? Ah, okay. Goyo or Gregorio, Gregorio del Pilar is the nephew of Marcelo H. del Pilar. Mhm, mhm. Yes, they are related. Where are we? So so let's talk about Marcelo again, Goya's uncle. He intended to return in a year or two to work on what he called the second phase of the propaganda, because he didn't think that the propaganda movement was going to be the end all be all to change and alleviate whatever the Filipinos were feeling at that time. Yes, you're free to take notes, Abby. So he wanted to return, kicking him off the country couldn't kill him. It doesn't what doesn't kill him only made him stronger. He's gonna come back. So while he did not specify what he would do or what this would entail, in one of his letters he did refer to the expulsion of the friars as a task the Filipinos themselves must undertake. It was clear to him that these friars they gotta go. Unlike Rizal, Delapilar was sympathetic towards the revolution because Rizal was like, mostly peace kind of guy. Like, we can do this. Like, we can talk about this. But Del Pilar, he was like, yeah, no, not really. We need to revolt. He declared himself in favor of insurrection as a last remedy. So, although he does not see it as like an immediate thing, he's like, if all else fails, we have to do it. Especially if the people no longer believe that peaceful means would suffice. So uh, let's focus on that. He believed that it's a last remedy, especially if the people, meaning the masses, the people who are actually affected of the injustices, no longer believe that being peaceful would work. So he is considering what the masses are feeling. He had been in the country. His pen would have been just right for the Katipunan. Desperately poor, though, he died in Spain in 1896. Now, Bonifacio prized Del Pilar's sympathy. He liked that and support and used his letters as guides to his thinking and action. So, yeah, we were led to believe that uh, Bonifacio is a Rizal fanboy. And although that is also true, it was um, Del Pilar's lectures that guided him. Bonifacio submitted to Del Pilar for his approval by the bylaws of the KKK, Kataas-taasan, Kagalang-galangang Katipunan. So he wanted Del Pilar's approval and made use of Del Pilar's letters approving of the organization of the Revolutionary Society to recruit more adherents. So he was also using the name of Del Pilar to tell the people, you know what, this is what Del Pilar, a very educated man, thinks. The Katipunan organ, Kalayaan, carried Del Pilar's name as editor-in-chief, a ploy to throw off the authorities. This had Del Pilar sanctioned. Like, okay, you can put my name there, do whatever you may, and yeah, just to throw them off so that they won't go after you, so that you can continue. That was very, very big brain of them. So great was Bonifacio's admiration for Del Pilar that he painstakingly copied the letters Del Pilar had written to his brother-in-law, Jodato Arellano. Bonifacio's treasured letters, the letters from Del Pilars, and the ones he himself received as sacred relics of the revolution and was guided by them. I hate to say it, but if there are Fujoshis in there in the chat box, this is like your go signal. Yes, you can ship them now. Just kidding, just kidding. Yeah, not dessert. So, yeah, TLDR, Bonifacio is a Del Pilar fanboy. Like he copied his letters and the actual letters that he received, he treasured them so much. Miyagi, thanks for the lurk. So, coming as they did from the lower echelons of the middle class, Bonifacio and his companions instinctively identified with the masses. Because, as we said, the the people who were from La Liga, they were all middle class, but some were upper middle class, some were lower middle class. And when they split, the lower middle class obviously sided with the masses. Although the early leadership of the Katipunan was essentially middle class, many members of this class could be considered almost plebeian in social status. For in the evolving society of that time, class differentiation was not very marked in the lower levels. Thus, it was possible for a bodeguero like Bonifacio or a bookbinder like Aguedo del Rosario to court clerks and other small employees like the others to feel an instinctive affinity for the working men in the cities and for the peasants in the countryside. They were not so different. And that made it easier for them to convince these people. It was therefore possible for this middle class organization to become the triggering force that would galvanize the masses into action because it expressed the masses' own demands for freedom from Spanish colonialism and friar despotism. Let's go to the next part, which is the historic initiative of the masses. The Katipunan emerged as the natural heir of the revolutionary tradition of the people, a tradition which had been manifested itself in uprising after uprising throughout 3 centuries of Spanish rule. However, these were fragmented struggles characterized by a spontaneity devoid of ideology. They were the instinctual reactions of a people that could not yet articulate its thoughts and its goals on a national scale. They could only see what is happening around them and not on a grander level. But now, the Katipunan is there. It inherited the struggle from these little uprisings. This this spontaneity flowed into the voids and the gaps of society, giving rise to an initiative which, though negative in nature, already delineated, if vaguely, the positive reconstruction of the body politic. Each resistance was both a negative reaction to a reality and a positive, if unarticulated, attempt to exchange the existing order. Each revolt was a search for an alternative as yet inchoate in the mind but deeply felt. They don't know what they want yet back then, but they know that what they're experiencing was not it, basically. When the material basis for a national consciousness emerged, it became possible to work on a national scale for an alternative to the colonial condition, which was absolute total shite. So anything is better. From its inception, the Katipunan set itself the task of arousing national feelings and working for the deliverance of the Filipino people as a whole from Spanish oppression and friar despotism. So, what differentiates the Katipunan's revolution from these tiny little uprisings is that the uprisings were like just reactionary to what is happening to them. Oh, thank you for following Vanilla 908. So these were tiny little reactions, and so they were easier to quell. But the Katipunan, they had this idea of a nation and wanting to free the whole nation from the furthest south islands to the furthest um, north islands. Now, believing that only a united people could achieve its own redemption, the Katipunan sought to lay the basis for this unity by fostering a stronger love of country and encouraging mutual aid, helping each other. It saw all Filipinos as equals and brothers, regardless of economic status. Whether you are from the masses, from the middle class, or you're an ilustrado, they were all Filipinos, they're equals, they are brothers. That's what the Katipunan thought. The fact that Bonifacio and the other leaders belonged to intermediate classes made them susceptible to a view of society which blunted the conflict between classes. Because, the masses and the upper classes did not have the same views, or they did not have the same wants and needs. But since they are from the middle class, they acted as a bridge. They saw the commonalities. Although Bonifacio himself voiced his resentment against those among the rich who were not sympathetic to the movement. Yeah, because fuck those guys. The Katipunan's approach was racial and anti-colonial. The anti-colonial basis of its principles led the leaders to the inescapable goal of independence. So we were talking about how the Katipunan and its leaders were like from the middle class, and they saw the common things between all of the classes, among all of them. Let's talk about that common denominator. Because of them, the motive force of the revolution was simply a common grievance of all social strata against a common enemy. They sought to strengthen the national unity by emphasizing the need for brotherhood. This is the explanation of their preoccupation with ethical behavior among the members of their organization. In Bonifacio's compendium, the rules of conduct of Katipunan members entitled The Duties of the Sons of the People, and in the Cartilla or primer of the Katipunan written by Emilio Jacinto, close associate of Bonifacio and the editor of Katipunan paper Kalayaan, we find many admonitions regarding the proper attitude towards women and regarding brotherly cooperation and many suggestions for good behavior. So it's not like all they have was fight against Spaniards. That's not it. They wanted to foster brotherhood, to become a nation, and they had proper decorum. So that includes their proper attitude towards women, because women were treated poorly during the Spanish times, and well, even now, but more so then. The Katipunan was in effect substituting its strictures for the preachment of the friars, with the important difference that this time the admonitions were for equals. They were seeing eye to eye, and it's not just some friar who is above all saying, oh, you do this and you do that, but we are beyond that because we're people of God. The exhortations were addressed to rich and the poor alike. There was no class approach. One might classify the aggravation as a primitive form of a united front welded together by a common desire for independence. Now let's focus on our boy, Andy. So Bonifacio, a synthesis. Hold on, let me just drink from my water bottle. Now let's continue. While the early revolts were movement without theory, the ilustrados, as they were educated, were the exponents of theory without movement. They were on the other side. It took Bonifacio to synthesize the two, because he was also a synthesis of the masses and of the ilustrados. He was educated but not fully because of his life circumstance, which forced him to struggle as well. So he's understanding both sides of the same coin. And so it took a Bonifacio to synthesize the two. For Bonifacio, though he came from the lower middle class, he had the instincts of the masses. It is characteristic of the middle class that its members have latent inclination towards both the upper and the lower class. To his credit, Bonifacio resolved this ambivalence decisively in favor of the masses. Whereas other leaders of similar economic status would later opt for absorption into the upper class, like their goal was not to liberate everyone, they want to just be in a better place personally. And they would be abandoning the people. But Bonifacio was different. He identified with the masses. Bonifacio and his companions had enough education to be able to imbibe the liberal ideas. He can read and write in Spanish. That's why he had all those letters and the copies of La Solidaridad, the books of Rizal, and Les Miserables, and the others. He was educated enough. They were therefore able to articulate the desires of the people. But unlike the Ilustrados, they were incapable of abstractions. Thus, their writings voiced the raw ideas of the people. They were not clouded by, the academic side of it. They see it as it is. And what they see is that the people are struggling. The Ilustrados, on the other hand, having acquired more education, could articulate their demands with greater facility and skill. They had a great mastery of the liberal ideas that could be projected and put to use in the struggles of their compatriots. Hi, welcome to the stream. Thank you for following Shinohara. But then again, these Ilustrados were already acquiring a vested interest in the status quo because, again, it was better for them. It placed them at a higher class than the masses. Hence, their aspirations were limited to asking for better accommodation within the system. They did not want to tear down the system that oppressed the people below them. They just wanted to be better so that they themselves would have a better place in it. And thank you for following Sakura Yumikawa. Welcome, welcome. We are reading Renato Constantino's The Philippines, A Past Revisited. And we are currently talking about how Bonifacio is a synthesis of the masses and the Ilustrados. So again, the Ilustrados were already acquiring a vested interest in the status quo because it benefited them. And their aspirations were limited to asking for better accommodation within the existing system. Although they resented the lack of equality with the Spaniards, they were reaping some of the benefits accruing to the ruling class. Their struggles were therefore based on the preservation of the colonial relation. Their goal was to become Spaniards, and therefore they wanted the Philippines to be a province of Spain. Although the country was in a revolutionary ferment and many of them were later drawn to the revolution, particularly when it looked as if the revolution might succeed, their participation was generally characterized by the prudence of men who, from the start, were ready to retreat. The ideas of Bonifacio did not have a solid ideological content. His was a primitive ideology based more or less on the dignity of man. But the great advance that must be credited to him and to his organization is that they raised the banner of separatism and saw clearly that revolution was the only way to achieve their goal. The goal was not to be a province of Spain. The goal was to be a nation on their own. Inchoate ideology. The Katipunan ideology was the articulation of a people just discovering themselves. It was it was the inchoate ideology of a people that had just become a nation. It was a baby nation. It was a call for struggle, for separation. While it was a cry for independence, it was also a demand for democracy, giving voice to the people. And this democracy, which took the most elementary form of a vague equality, was the answer to the lack of democracy among the Filipinos because they were not the equals of the Spaniards. In this primitive form, the people under Bonifacio's leadership had already seen the connection between anti colonialism and democracy. Because they are like the total opposite. Because in colonialism, you have this country, these people stepping over the rights of the people within the colony, while in democracy, everyone would be equal. Yeah. But it was an imperfect view for while the leaders identified themselves with the masses, they still have a residue of hierarchism, which was a legacy from Spain. Because again, in the beginning, when we were not yet colonized, most of the people who lived by the seas and the rivers, they viewed each other as equals. They had quote unquote leaders, but these leaders are more of people who were esteemed due to their contribution to their little societies. Maybe they were a great fighter, or maybe they did something to help the other people, and the people would respect them because of the help that they've been giving them. So it was a relationship where they were of equal power. But when Spain came, that was totally removed. The idea of equality is now banished, and now there was a hierarchy. And of course, the people from the revolution, they have been in this system. They were born into it. It was 300 years in the making. It was all around them. So you cannot blame them for not totally seeing from beyond it. So, yeah, where were we? The masses, too, while now becoming conscious of their power, still looked up to their leaders. So the leaders of the Katipunan, who came from a higher stratum because they were more educated. In the early days of the revolution, it seemed as if the idealist goal of universal equality was within reach, and all the revolutionists shared a common identification as Filipinos. The sincere leaders there are, of course, like Bonifacio, failed to see the dangers of ilustrado ambition, while the masses, despite their newfound dignity, trustingly followed the ilustrado leadership in their respective provinces. Because, they're just relearning this thing called equality. So they were very much groomed to follow someone in a position of power or in a position of leadership. The Katipunan failed to detect the fundamental bifurcation within its ranks, which would soon erupt in a struggle for leadership. Okay, now let us go to the final part of this chapter. It was a beginning for the masses. It was also a beginning for the emerging leadership. Although the Supreme Council was a shadow government, the popular and town councils acted as governing bodies. The Katipunan's ideas of the government that would replace the existing one after the triumph of the revolution were still vague because, okay, what if we kicked off the Spaniards off the islands? What now? That was the situation. The inchoate desires of the people were responsible for the inchoate declarations of Bonifacio. It took the Ilustrados to give these desires more explicit form. At the same time, they took care that the resulting creation would carry their imprint. Eventually, the revolution became a people's war under elite leadership. And that is the end of this chapter. For part 3 of this book, chapter 11, part 3 is Unity and Disunity. We're going to talk about revolution, mostly. But we are not doing that today. We're going to stop reading for now. Let me just return to my just chatting screen. Yes, we finished the chapter. Congratulations, you sat through that. Yay! How how are y'all feeling? um, hold on. What was? Oh my god! Oh my god! I have a. What do you call this? I now have funny number. Let me just open my um clipping app. I want to clip this because I have funny number on my Twitch. I have now 420 followers. Yay! Oh, which reminds me, I need to schedule a what do you call that? A celebration stream because I have 420 followers. Where is my clipping? Okay, so while we are waiting for my clipping app to start up, any questions or reactions? Okay, it doesn't want me to. It doesn't want me to do the clippy thingy. So what should I do? Ah, yes. I will just. Why? Why? Snipping tool. Run as administrator. Oh, you have the screenshot. Please tag me. It won't let. Oh, oh, here. I also got the screenshot thingy now. Yay! 420 followers. Let me just quickly post that on Facebook. I'll do it later on Twitter. But yeah, thank you for sitting through this entire lesson. Um, do I have an announcement? Let us see. Tomorrow. Oh, wait. I'm not really sure if I will be going to a stream later. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to announce it, but I'm like on the queue for this other stream with. Okay, let me just announce it this way. Okay, please watch tonight at 9 or 10 p.m. Ling Ling O, because she will be having a devour stream with one of the Invicta boys, Kite, the dragon boy. He's also a Filipino. And I don't know if I'm joining them because, like, they're not yet sure of the lineup. I'll inform you. But whether or not I'll join them, I will be on the stream. I will be watching. I will be modding. But what is sure is that I still have streams on Saturday and on Monday. On Saturday at 6 p.m., I will be playing Muse Dash. Yay, it's a rhythm game. But at 8, we will continue playing with Mino, A Way Out. We're still out there running from the Popo. We have escaped from jail. And I guess we are about to go to Mexico to fuck up the person who sent us to jail. That sounds so bad. B.A. Ling, Ling, Ling. I was promoting your thing. Like, yeah. She's going to stream later. Please watch her. I'll be there. I'll be cheering for her. I'm totally not going to sip for Invicta Voice. Hello, Katsumaki. Thank you for the follow. What else? Yeah, I'll be streaming with Mino on Saturday at 8 p.m. But I will start streaming at 6 or whatever. I might be late because I always am. And on Monday, September 5 at 8 p.m., I will be doing this series wherein every Monday at 8 p.m. there will be a free live tarot reading. We'll call it Mystic Mondays. So yeah, if you are interested in having your cards pulled, I am going to do free tarot card readings. I'm not yet sure if I will have any guests, but yeah, I'll see you on Monday and give you Some readings. I might do like a general pick a card reading as well. So there's that. Other what are my other announcements? Yeah. Other announcements. Mino is open for art commissions. You can check out his gang profile. I think it should be on his Twitter. Please do check him out. Um, Also, I think Ling and Serene's wait list are open. Just message them. If you need art, you can message them. They're all amazing artists. Please support local artists. Yes, and also I have commissions opened as well. If you would like look at the lower part of the page, just go down at the panels. You will see my gag. You can support me there by availing of my tarot reading services. I actually have one customer there now. I'm still really confused about how gang works because I don't see any notifications. I think I need to talk to them about that. But yeah, if you want to support me there, you can definitely pay through there. They accept Gcash, so that's great. Um Aside from that, you can also support me by giving donations there. You don't need to do tarot reading if that is not something that you're into. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Right. Thank you. Oh, I haven't talked to you. I've been meaning to talk to you. I was not able to attend to the thing you were inviting me to. I'm so sorry because, okay, let me be honest. That night when we were supposed to collab, sort of, kind of, with the what do you call that? What's that game? Fall Guys. I had to go to an emergency meeting with the Balangay. I can say this now because it's already done. And that was the night when we found out that we were going to have a booth for Conquest. And it was like less than a week before the actual thing. So we were very stressed. And then after that, we did all the planning. I did not have time to contact you. And other stuff in my personal life happened as well. I'm not sure if you saw my status like a few weeks ago. I had to be at the hospital for a whole week. So, yeah, a lot of things happened. I'm sorry about that. But if you want to invite me again for something like that, I'm willing to show up as long as, there isn't an emergency like those things. I'll be there. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me talk and read about history. I'm very glad that there are people who are interested in Philippine history because a lot of people are, taking history for granted. And as I have said earlier, and as a lot of people have said, people who forget the past are deemed to repeat its mistakes. And that's something that I do not want to happen to any one of us. That's why I'm doing this. It's actually weird because this is not in my plans. When I became a VTuber, my plan was to be, yes, just that dragon girl who does tarot card readings. That is my brand. Look at me. I have tarot cards in front of me. But here we are. I just believe that someone has to do it. Someone has to go out there and try to preserve history. And yeah, if no one else can do it, fuck it, I will. But yeah, if you have any more questions and reactions to what we have read today, um, thoughts, just a general debriefing, thoughts and other like processing. So, as a summary, we talked about the start of the revolution, how the Ilustrados, in their search for equality and to become a province of Spain, have led to the revolution of the masses. We saw how the La Solidaridad didn't really have the solidarity that their name had. They were actually not besties. How La Liga Filipina after 4 days of being established, got Rizal arrested, and it split into two factions. The richer ones were more into, what Rizal was going for and what the other ilustrados were going for, which was assimilation, while those who were in the lower middle class, like Bonifacio, formed the Katipunan because they relate more to the people. Yes, it is an educational stream. Actually, most of my streams, when I'm not actually playing, is educational. Like, for example, last night I did a stream to teach how to write in Baybayin. We didn't actually get to learn how to write Kulitan, the Kapampangan script, because that would take longer. I might schedule it for a later date, but that will happen one day. But yeah, I will be streaming again tomorrow. Wait, is that tomorrow? No, on Saturday. Isn't that great? You're watching a VTuber, but also at the same time, the people around you are thinking that you are in class. But technically, you are in class because I'm teaching and I'm a licensed professional teacher. So technically, this is a free class. But yeah, I have to clarify though that I'm not strictly a history teacher by profession. My major was elementary education, which is like, a very, very general jack of all trades thingy. Oh, wait, no. And stream. Oh, wait, no, I'm not answering. Oh, no. Technical difficulties. I'm sorry about that. Yes, the bye stream. But you might want to, like, what do you call this? Wait for the Kulitan stream, which is, it's like the baybayin, but it's a different script because it's for Kapampangan and it's written differently, totally differently. But if you were still interested, you can find the Baybayin stream in my VODs. It's still there, and before it gets removed, I will be uploading it in YouTube for future people to read it. Yes, the Kulitan is a Kapampangan script, and it's actually derived from Baybayin. Well, when you say Baybayin, it's Tagalog, so it's hard for me to say that. But the general script of Luzon, they call it Baybayin in Tagalog. They call it Kuriitan in Ilocano, Basahan in Bicolano, and there's another form of it. But it's basically the same thing. The Kapampangans derived their script from that one, but they messed up with it, and now it's totally different. But I like it. It's very, very pretty. Hello, Shinano. Hi. Welcome to the stream, although we're almost about to end. So, yeah, you can look at my previous stream because I did teach how to write baybayin. You can actually search for like the characters of baybayin online, but if you want like how to actually use them, because you don't just use them the way you would use the ABCs, it's a different way of writing because it's an abugida. So I explain in that stream how to actually write with it. And yeah, and in the future, I think I might actually repeat that stream when I have a bigger audience, because I think it's going to be interesting to see more people use that script as it reflects our languages better. Because as I was talking about last night, there's a lot of racial elitism in the Philippines within the different groups. Like, for example, especially in the 90s, people were very, very racist towards the Visayan people. And they would make fun of them when they interchange the I and the E sound, or the O and the U sound. But if you look at baybayin, you would figure out that, oh, back then there was not a lot of difference. The characters for o and u is the same. The character for e and e is also the same. And you would also notice that the character for da and dra is also the same, because if we are talking, sometimes we would exchange those two sounds without even thinking about it. Like din and drin. When you have a vowel at the end, at the end of the last word, you use R. But if you have a consonant, you would use D. So it just makes sense for the spelling to remain the same, and it to them it's actually the same letter. For example, when you say hindi din, that sounds very, very harsh. So what we would say is hindi rin. But yeah, it's the same word, right? And what else? I was using the po example. So if you go to the store, magkano po yung ano, yung ganito, ganyan, you would spell that as P-O, po. But when you pronounce it, magkano po yung, it becomes an O, right? So it really changes. So yeah, that's a remnant of like our languages past. Your brain is going brr. Yeah. But basically, in our language, we interchange letters to make the language sound smoother, right? And that is also reflected in the baybayin and definitely in other, what do you call this? In other scripts like the kulitan. And yeah, it's just nice to learn about it so that we get more insight on why do we talk like this, because that is our language before, because this is how we wrote before. So yeah, I will not be keeping you any longer. This feels like an actual class, and I'm feeling like, oh, you might be late for your next class. Oh, you want to write in Baybayin and make it into calligraphy background for art. That is actually nice. Baybayin is a very, very pretty script because, it's very, very wavy. Um, it represents the waters because Baybayin also means like the shore wherein the water touches land. And we explained that last night, that the meaning of baybayin as a form of writing is a figurative derivation from the meaning of baybayin as shore. So if you look at the letters, especially the or e sound, it's very, very just waves and waves. But yeah, if you have like any questions regarding how to write in Baybayin, you can at me in on Twitter. That's at Bakunawa underscore air, HEIR. Yes, so I'm open to like answering questions on how to do baybayin. I also talked about how what do you call this? My design as a VTuber has baybayin elements in it, because you might not know it, but this current chibi that you are seeing right now, this is not my real form. My real form will be revealed maybe in a month or two, or maybe on my debut. I'm not yet sure, but when I do reveal it, you will see that I have elements of baybayin. I can actually show it now. Hold on, because everyone has already seen my PNG anyway. Let me just put it here. Is it showing up? Oh no. Let me just make this bigger. There we go. It's on that side. Hold on. Let me just make this smaller so that everyone can see me. Look at my pretty eyes. Look at my pretty eyes. Ling made my eyes. Oh, before we go on, can you see the dragon behind my eyes? There's a dragon there. Maybe I will show it to you when I debut, but yes, this is my model, and there are certain elements of baybayin in it. So if you would look at my boob window, look at my boob window. I will talk about the earrings, but look at the boob window. Yes, look at my boobs. Yes, it's in the shape of an inverted heart because in baybayin, this shape spells ba, not just B as in one letter, but ba, B and A. Because I'm a what? I'm a what? I'm a bakunawa, right? So again, baybayin is an abugida. So when you see that symbol, it's not B as in the letter B, it's the syllable ba. We don't have individual letters, we have syllables. But if you would look at my earring, they're of the same shape, but it has like a dot at the top. You see that? Those tiny little golden balls. So if you put a dot at the top, the ba changes to be or B. So if you would read my earrings, it will say my name. It's BB. So yeah, BB. But it can also be Bebe because E and E are basically the same thing in our baybayin. So it can be read as BB. It can be Bebe. It can also be Baby or Bibe. That's why I call my chat ducklings. You are my little bibis. So yeah, those are like baybayin elements in my design. There are many other symbolisms and other stuff within my design that I would discuss in my debut. But for now, just know that I did not put the boob window there just so that you can see how pretty my boobs are. Although I must admit they're pretty nice, but it's for the letter, I mean the symbol for ba. Because I'm a bakunawa or a moon eating dragon. Let me just remove myself. I know I look pretty. Yes, the booba is not a clickbait. Like, looking respectfully. Yes, you may look at them respectfully. Just look, don't touch. So, yeah, what was I saying? Oh, yes, it's purely professional. I am a professional moon eater. I will eat all the moons. So, hi, hello to all the moon themed VTubers out there. You are in my menu. You can run, but you can't hide. We can't touch the screen, so don't worry. Even if you do touch the screen, though, it wouldn't feel nice. It would be just flat and hard. The opposite of what's beneath the booba window. So yeah, um, anything else? So if you have like any questions regarding baybayin, kulitan, oh, Mayari themed VTuber. There's actually a VTuber named Mayari. She debuted this month, and I keep on. Well, it's not that I'm harassing her, but I keep on asking to bite her. Nyum. Nyum. But yeah, I know one moon themed VTuber, and I can't wait to collab with all of them. It's going to be a mukbang. I will rate the moon themed VTubers based on how tasty they are. We do interact on Twitter a lot. She's also very, very pretty. Yes, moon mukbang. Bibi Bakunawa tasting all the moon themed VTubers. That will be a thing that I will work on. It's actually in my VTuber goals. It's a long term goal, but I will make it happen somehow. Yes, of course, definitely. I always have a tarot deck beside me, open, and like even if I don't have them open, my tarot shelf is like one arm's length away. Okay, let's. Oh. Okay, Gun. I would like to say number one, sorry for what you're going through right now because definitely that is not easy. But the cards want to tell you that things might look like they're burning or it might feel like it, but everything will be fine. Everything's fine. It's gonna be fine. Hold on, let me just you're in a difficult situation, but that's okay. It's gonna be fine. Okay, what's this? You got another card, Five of Swords. Okay, it's saying that it's gonna be fine, but you have to cut your losses right now. Like, if you know that things are not going well for you, you have to think about it in a smart way. Because if things are not going well and you don't think this will go anywhere good, cut your losses now, honey. So, yeah, I actually pulled two cards instead of just one. I don't know. Because there are times when you tried everything, but you have to realize that in the end, it's not worth it. You're not winning this in any way. You just have to accept things, forgive yourself, because there's no use to fighting a losing battle. But things will be okay. It's all right. Be open to changes, and there might be resentment, but you have to learn how to forgive yourself for things that you have done or you might have not done, things that people other have done or might not have done for you, because in the end if you keep them as baggage, uh it's not going to help you. But also, although things seem like everything is failing or on fire, it's just reassuring you that things are going to be okay. That things are like this so that there are better things coming your way in the future. That's what the cards have to say. I don't know what you're going through, but I hope it gets better. I hope that things get better for you. So, yeah, if anyone else wants to have their cards pulled, I'm open to that. There are redeems. I have brought it back last night. I removed it because it was a buy and stream, but we can easily turn this into a, you know, tarot reading stream because that's what I do. So, yeah. Any anyone else? Okay, another card fell out, so I think this is still for gun. Uh, it's saying that you don't have to cry over the things that you think you have lost. Well, it's okay to cry about it, but like do not focus yourself on the negative things because there are still things in your life that are good. There are still people who care about you. There are still opportunities out there waiting for you. So focus your energies in those things instead of focusing on the bad. So yeah. I'm trying to look for who else we can raid. Ah, yes. Is this your first time to get your cards read? I know it's kind of creepy if it's the first time to, if it's your first time to get a card reading and it's kind of spot on. Oh, it's the second time. Interesting. But yeah, this is what I do professionally aside from teaching, actually. If I haven't told you or you haven't been on my stream where I explain it, I have been reading tarot cards for more than a decade now. Yes, I'm old. A romance reading. So, yep. Don't be scared. Sure, it's shocking if the cards are like saying things that you didn't think you would hear, but at the end of the day, tarot reading, any form of divination, is not about you finding out about what's going to happen to you in the future. It's about reading the energies of the past, the present, and the future, and you taking back the power, knowing this information, so that you can lead yourself to a better future. It's not set in stone. Hi, thank you for following Phobia. So as I was saying, tarot card readers, if they tell you that, oh, this bad thing is going to happen and you can't stop it unless you do this, so give me money so that we will do this thing to prevent it. No, that is a scam. That is definitely a scam. A good tarot card reader will tell you that you have the power. You have the power to change your own destiny. Not the stop. Stop reminding everyone that I'm old. Oh, Shinano, I will be having a tarot reading stream on Monday at 8 p.m. I hope you can be there. I'll be reading cards for probably friends and for the chat for free. But like if you want to have your cards read privately, I also do that professionally. You can contact me through my Gank link. I'm offering tarot reading commissions. There is a link down there, down there, down there. So yeah. Now I'm not really sure who this is for because I accidentally picked up a set of cards, three of them actually. So there are currently 18 people viewing this. I I don't know which one of you is this for, but this is for most probably a woman, a very, very emotional woman. Someone in the chat, is there a woman there? I don't know because I'm always assuming that it's mostly boys on Twitch. But yeah, This is for a woman or someone who is in touch with their feminine side. Very full of emotion, full of care, and you're going through kind of a lot of resistance right now. Like it's not a very easy time. There's a lot of fighting going on. Maybe it's with your friends or maybe it's with yourself. And yeah, it's saying that you need to focus on like working on what's important. I mean, working on what is important. Don't be, what do you call this? Don't focus on this fighting. It's okay to work alone. It's telling you to like um distance yourself from these fights. I'm not sure who is fighting, but there are people fighting, and the cards are telling you to, yeah, it's better to work alone than to fight. I mean, to insert yourself in the narrative. So it's just like do an Eliza. I'm erasing myself from the narrative. So yeah, that's what you should do. That's what the cards are telling you. I don't know who this is for. It just fell off. Yes, gun. Yes, focus on the good things in life. Focus on um, the things that make you happy. Hold on. Why is my avatar angry? That's weird. Have you ever tried to pick a card but you have no client or anything? Well, sometimes I also do readings for myself, not a lot. I also used to do pick a card readings. Like I would make videos on YouTube wherein I just do four readings, and in the beginning of the video you pick one card that you feel drawn towards, and then whichever card you picked, that would be your reading. So yeah, I do pick cards without like a certain exact person in mind. I also tried that on Twitter. Like I sometimes have threads of mini pick a card readings wherein you pick a card from the picture and then you can look for it in the comments, the meaning of it. Let me just turn off the other monitor, which is the one I keep looking at. the the avatar is getting angry. Yeah. You know what? It's not that you have to think positively all the time. It's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to be sad or get mad, but do not dwell in that, because if you dwell in that, uh, you can't remove yourself from the situation that is keeping you in that state of mind. Anyways, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. I was looking for someone to raid. Right now, the only one that I kind of. Oh, I'm going to send you to Augie TV. He is playing Genshin Impact. He's also a Filipino, by the way. So hold on, let me just type my what is our raid message? BB time raid again. So it's gonna be BB time raid, and then where is my raid logo? I mean emote. How do I do that? Okay, like this. But if you don't, oh, Mikhail Saints, Thank you for the hydrate and thank you for the stretch. Let me just stretch my neck while we're doing that. Uh, if you don't have my raid emote, um, oh, Pastel Awen, thank you for following. We're just about to raid someone. Okay, so again, if you don't have my emote, you can replace it with like a dragon. But yeah, if you want my emotes, they're very, very cute. Some of them were made by Hatchy Paws. Uh, you can subscribe to me. But yes, we are now going to raid Augie TV, and they're playing Genshin Impact. We have the raid message down there. You can copy it. And that would be all for today. I'm sorry for the other viewers who came in late. We're about to end the stream, but until next time, I'll see you on Saturday, I think. Yes, I'll see you on Saturday. We will be playing with Mino at 6 p.m. But until then, au revoir, adios, annyeong. Zaijian, sayonara. Sampai jumpa. Paalam mga minamahal. Baby, bye-bye.
Let me see. Oh my god! Wait! Ate B! Ate B! Hello! Oh my
He'll be back
god!
an hour raided Orgy TV with 15 viewers.
Just in time for the pool. Hello, ate. Good morning. I mean, good afternoon. Oh my gosh, what is that?
Sweat and tears.
Shinanu
That's
is now
what.
following. Welcome to the Orgy TV fan.
Oh my That's so adorable. Ate.
39th
Oh
underscore
my god,
Sarah
ate,
is now following.
you have your
Welcome to
VTuber
the Orgy
avatar
TV fan.
already.
Heart.
Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Oh my god, wait, let me catch up. Ate B, thank you for the raid, everyone. Wait, let me give you a shout out
Gungramir
first.
is now following. Welcome to
Ate
the
B
Orgy TV
is
fan.
a very
Heart.
special VTuber, a Bakunawa VTuber, a very Filipino-inspired mythical creature. Okay, let's see what. Oh my God! Wait, I'm not ready. Clearly, I'm mild panicking right now. Oh my
Netuser
god,
is now
hello
following.
everyone. Welcome,
to the Orgy
Raiders.
TV fan. Heart.
Shinanu, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining ATB on the raid. KillerCurrent.inc. Oh my god, hello.
Sleepy Katu is
I remember
now following.
you.
Welcome
Thank you
to
so
the
much
Orgy
for
TV
being
fan.
here.
Heart.
Hello ATB, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the follow. 39th Seraphim. Gun Graymere. Who are we pulling for? We are pulling for the new Dendro 5-star unit. And welcome Gun Grammere. Thank you for the follow as well. And Netuser? Netuser? Welcome to Doggy TV fam, everyone. Yes, oh, this is not yet my real form. Oh, might take a month pa for rigging. Oh, but it's looking good, ate. Sleepy Kato, hello. Thank you so much for the follow as well. Welcome to Doggy TV fam for all those who have
Sweat and tears.
followed
that's
me
what.
and who came from the raid.
Stronger.
Hello everyone. For those who don't know
Learn something
me,
from
for
that.
those of you who don't know me, I am Augie. Welcome to Augie TV. I am a Filipino VTuber, a catboy VTuber, inspired by my avatar in Final Fantasy XIV. I mainly stream Final Fantasy XIV, but today I'm taking a break from all the patch 6.2 hype. I missed playing I missed playing Genshin Impact, so I decided to play Genshin Impact just in time for the release or after the release of the Sumeru region. Sorry, I was timed out. No worries, Sleepy Kato. Happy streaming. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here. And yes, what were you playing, Ate? Wait, let me check. Have I put in the shout out command? Oh my gosh. I think I forgot it. Wait. Oh, there we go. Last stream, just chatting. What were you up to last stream, Ate? What is the community up to while you were streaming? We were reading a history book. Oh, what kind of history book? Thank you. I hope you get Tignari. Let's go. Yes. And you guys are just in time. Because I was just reloading my account for those sweet primo gems. I'm just trying to log in through Razer Gold because I think I mean, we can get rebate if you top up using Razer Gold.
Best flavor in the world.
Okay.
The sweet,
Chapter 10
sweet
of
taste
Renato
victory. And
Constantino's
that's
The
why I've never
Philippines,
spent
a
single
past
more on any of
revisited.
my snacks. I've won 'em all fair
I forgot
and
my
square.
password. Wait, where is my password
right.
manager? Okay, one password. Where? Okay. Augie, please don't tell everyone your password, okay? I tend to like say things that I see or read. Okay, where is my Razer Gold? Oh my god, thank you so much for the raid. Wait, there's no Razer Gold here. Huh? Okay, let me guess my password. Oh my gosh.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, it's not accepting my passwords. Oh my god, it's not working.
Arataki numero
This is so
uno
embarrassing.
ito here in the flesh.
I want to use my Razer Gold. How about this? With an underscore. There we go. No, it's not. Oh my god, I was temporarily banned. No.
I'm on it.
Oh, wait. Maybe it's in my phone.
Safety
Because
first.
I checked the credentials on my
Sure,
iPad
boss.
and it might not be updated. I got banned. Oh my gosh. Razer Gold, please unban me. Unban me. Oh my gosh. Because I use my phone for my what do you call this? YouTube Studio. So I am like reaching out. Razer Gold, Razer Gold. Oh my gosh, it's not here.
So
Maybe I
Gino
tried to
is
forget
saying that we wait for you, PB. So yeah.
Works.
Cause he was like saying he's angry
Okay.
about Serene not directly
Alright,
saying I'm
stand
sorry.
by everyone.
Don't underestimate the
Yeah, okay, kasi I update. So I talk to Serene.
Password
Diba?
reset.
And then screenshot that because of course it's a call. And then so we were on call and I said like I wanna date her right
I
now.
was
Right
temporarily
now.
locked for 20
And then
minutes, so I need to-
we talked about what
Password.
we would want. And then she also gave a list. And at first medyo hesitant siya on my side of the list. Because of course you know naman what Serene is gonna ask for, like affection, basically verbal affection. Right?